An old man named Odun lived in a peaceful village, surrounded by thick trees and hills. Everyone knew him for being generous and friendly. Odun devoted his days to serving others, mending walls and furnishing people's huts in the village. Despite his lack of income and property, because he never owned any property, he had a big heart and hands that were always willing to give and ready to help. But as time goes on, Odun became weaker over the time. His breath became weaker, his movements became slower, and his hair started falling off like that of a typical old man. He had no wealth, no land, but he had a large heart, and his hands were always ready to give. As time passed, Odun grew pale and his breath like that of a sickler. One morning, a wise old healer visited him. She told Odun that this is his time in the world and his time was drawing close to an end. Odun smiled vocally, but contented with the life he had lived still. There was one thing that he wanted on his deathbed, and that was his last wish. His last wish was that he wanted something that would bring him everything, the things he didn't have. So he said, "Dear healer, I have lived a life full of blessings, but I have no way in nowhere had a family to call my own. My want is simple, to give all I have to a child who needs it the most." The healer raised an eyebrow. Puzzled. "But you have nothing left to give, Odun. What could you considerably offer? What can you possibly give out?" Odun's eyes sparkled with a quiet understanding. "I offer what I have left, my final breath. I wish that it may carry stoppage and warmth to a child without a family, that they may feel the love I have lived with. I may not have gold or jewelries to give out, but my love is a gift that will never fade." The healer stood silent for a minute, moved by the shock of Odun's want. With a heavy heart, she started a soft chant, and she granted his request. That night, as Odun lay in the bed, his last breath filled the air. It was not just a breath, it was a tale of love and stopgap. As he exhaled, an unforeseen want filled the village, and in the middle of the night, a child appeared at the doorstep of an orphan family, covered in a flowing cloak of light. The child, with a smile like that of a gifted angel, was welcomed into the family. They named her Ewa, as nobody even knew where she came from or her name. And from the moment she arrived, she brought joy and hustle to the family, deemed for sadness in the village. She was kind, strong, and full of love. A child who carried the warmth of Odun's final want in her heart. In the days that followed, the town spoke of the man who had given everything for a child he had never met. Odun's heritage lived on in Ewa, and his selflessness and his selfless acts became a story passed down through generations. Well, it was said that the towns would never forget the assignment Odun taught them. That true wealth lies not in what we keep, but in what we give. And that indeed, in the final moments of life, one could make a continuing difference, leaving behind not riches, but the topmost treasure of all, which is love. Now, all the villagers have particularly learned that the topmost gift we can give isn't material wealth, but selflessness and love. True impact comes from our conduct and the way we watch for others, especially when we anticipate nothing in return.